Today, you will hear about obviously the RFP process and what we're interested in funding. You'll meet our team and the team of Consuela and Cassie will guide you through the specifics of the RFP, including the timeline and deadlines and all of that. And then we welcome the Q&A and discussion that the group will have. I mentioned the introductions and you can see our faces, but here we are again. The African American Legacy Fund, for those of you who may not know, has been around for 15 or so years. It is a fund that sits underneath the Chicago Community Trust. It was founded by some incredibly bright, driven, just wonderful leaders, professional folks in the Black community. And we are privileged to carry the mission forward. In the last several years, we've supported over 500 grassroots organizations. Our focus areas in terms of grant making sort of shift depending on what the board and the community is really interested in. So we don't do recurring focus areas just because we're really trying to have a responsive program. And we've given away at this point almost $3 million so far. Our goal, of course, is to raise money in order to re-grant it. So there's a whole different committee that's responsible for the fundraising so that Inger and I, Cassie and Consuela, can help fund the organizations like yours. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to Consuela, and she's going to take us through this year's grant cycle.
Thank you, Suzanne, and good morning, everybody. So Suzanne talked in her introduction about the fact that this is intended to be a responsive grant-making program. And so we historically have changed or modified funding areas that are based on what we see to be as emerging needs. This year, we have 5 focus areas. 2 of them are from last year and 3 are new. So I'd like to just spend a minute kind of unpacking what those focus areas are. And again, as a reminder, as you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will try to address those questions as they arise. So the focus areas are education, activism, job creation, mental health, and the arts. Let me just sort of talk you through each of those. Primarily the education, we are looking to support organizations that provide academic enrichment to Black students grades K through 12. Under the arts, we are looking to support cultural organizations that share and celebrate the lived experience of Black people, past and present. For the mental health focus area, we are looking to support organizations that prepare providers or community members to deliver or advocate for trauma-informed care. And this trauma-informed care actively responds to the disproportionate burden of stress on Black people and Black communities due to unemployment, instability, financial strain, family stress, trauma, and gun violence. In the area of activism this year, we seek to support organizations that actively dismantle anti-Black racism and advances the movement for Black lives in Chicago. And then finally, under our job creation, we are looking to support organizations that create jobs through social enterprise, worker cooperatives, and micro-enterprise for youth, specifically between the ages of 16 and 24. So those are our 5 focus areas. And now I'd like to just get us to the funding criteria. So under our funding criteria, we are, as an African American Legacy Fund, we'd like to say that we are unapologetically Black. And so we are looking to support organizations that are Black led and Black serving. So what that means for us is that we look at the board composition, and we look at the staff composition, as well as those that you are serving. So when we talk about Black serving, we are looking at the number of participants served, and those for the prior year should be 51% or more. For Black-led organizations, we are looking to support organizations that both have at the helm a Black ED, and at the board level a Black board chair, as well as a board and staff that are comprised of 51% African American Black employees and staff. We are, as sort of intimated in our focus areas, committed to social justice, and are now looking to support organizations that have organizational budgets between $50,000 and $2 million. $2 million. And when we talk about social justice, we are looking at organizations that in their mission and in their vision statements are specifically intending to target systems that are dismantling inequality and are leveling the playing field. So we look at things like the redistribution of resources, opportunities, and a shared responsibility for service delivery and changes across all communities. We are place-based. We will look to fund organizations that are in Chicago primarily and the Chicago metropolitan area. That is both in terms of service and location. And then we are, again, looking to make sure that the people in the metropolitan area are receiving the adequate services. These are one-year grants. You can have currently an ALO grant and apply for another grant. As Suzanne was intimating, we are trying to be as responsive as possible. One thing to note here is that while you can have an AL grant, the assumption is that we are not necessarily going to just assume that just because you had received funding from the African American Legacy Fund in the past that you would receive funding this year. The message that we try to send to people is that we really want to support getting or helping organizations to move to the next organizational and institutional level. And so prior funding is not guarantee for continued funding. We will be responsive to all requests that are in their current form, and so do not assume that just because you have a grant that you are likely to get another in the coming year. The other piece is that if you have a grant from, you can have a grant from the Chicago Community Trust. In fact, we encourage it. And you could also have a grant from the African American Legacy Fund. And this year, the unique function and feature is that we are looking to only offer general operating grants. So let me just take a minute and pause and sort of talk about what that would mean. So since we are going to be offering only general operating grants, we, in terms of the application itself, and something that you all need to think about is in the focus areas, we will be looking to see if your organization overall embodies one of those focus areas. And so so don't come to us thinking in terms of a program. Come to us thinking about how your organization's mission and overall activities would fall into one of the 5 focus areas. And you should be thinking as well about that in the context of the outcomes that you are going to be offering. So those are organizational outcomes, not program outcomes. And that also speaks to the budgets you're submitting. You're only required to submit an organizational budget, not a project budget. So in order for you to, for your application to be submitted, there is a short form application online, your current fiscal year operating budget, an operating statement from the prior year, your current board list, and your board composition. You have, you don't have to be a 501c3. You do have to have a fiscal agent, and that relationship should be established through which you don't necessarily have to provide to us, but you should have it, some kind of a memorandum of understanding between you and that fiscal agent. I'm going to ask Cassandra Sampson, who's part of this team, to walk you through the application process.
The application process for those that have applied previously, it'll be the same process with Grant Central. For those that are new to the Chicago Community Trust and have not applied to a grant before, you are going to go to cct.smartsimple.com. It's also hyperlinked in the RFP. You can see the screenshot. This is how it's going to look for a new user. If you're new to Grant Central, you're going to register. We also have a YouTube video that kind of walks you through the whole Grant Central process. Again, this is for individuals that have yet to apply to a grant for the Chicago Community Trust. The tutorial is very beneficial because then you'll be able to apply to other funding opportunities for the Chicago Community Trust. And we'll provide the link to the tutorial in the follow-up email. The application. So this year, it's a short form application, as Consuela noted. This is kind of a mock-up of what the questions that you're going to be asked. So when you go into the application, you can already be ready to answer these questions. It's only a few questions. What we do want to know is that for the second question, we are seeking specific answers to which program area that you're applying to. So when you do apply to the AO application, you're going to see these questions: organization name, application summary, grant request amount, and the 2 questions shown in the screen below. But we want you to make sure for that second question, you answer the focus area. And lastly, for the organizational profile, we know it's a bit burdensome, so we tried to work with grants management this year to see some questions that, in regard to AAL's application, don't need to be answered. So we're trying to customize, in a sense, to take off some questions that we don't need to review for this specific application process. So when you have the RFP in front of you, you're going to see a few pages that have an example of the questions that you can bypass, and it's going to look like the images on your screen right now. It's just going to be highlighted in gray and crossed out, and you're just going to put 0 because you have to put something in those text boxes. So in order to bypass it, we're just going to put 0. Again, you'll know the exact questions that you can bypass. If you look at the RFP, it's going to show the exact order of the questions that are in Grant Central for the organizational profile. And those questions, like 25 and 26, you can just put 0.
In addition to the questions you can bypass in the organizational profile, we also ask that you pay close attention to question 35 for additional information that we ask that you include in answering this question.
Thank you, Cassandra. So you are free to open, the portal is open. You can apply now, and up until May 11th at 11:59 p.m. Again, a reminder that you have to have your organizational profile completed and submitted in order for the application to be accepted. Any incomplete applications will not be reviewed. From June to July, we will be having site visits. Those site visits are roughly 60 to 90 minutes, and they will this year will be online. We used a Zoom format last year, and we'll be using a similar format this year. It is likely that there will be at least I or another consultant will be on the line. We also are hoping that you will get to meet an AAL board member who will also, or maybe two, who will be joining that call. Then from July, in September, the board of directors, the African American board of directors will meet and make a decision, a final decision on the recommendations from the grants committee. And you should hear by, if a grant is awarded, you will receive notification by September 30th. And if you are not advancing past the application phase, we will send you a notification as well. So we are here for about an hour. We will be wrapping up at 11 o'clock. Going to be finishing up the presentation and then opening some questions, the floor for questions and answers. And I see that there are a couple of questions in the chat, so we'll get to those. In addition to these, this time frame, there are a couple of ways that you can get some guidance. So we are offering this year peer clinics. They will be an hour. They're just really kind of open an hour of just kind of pop in and ask a question or offer a thought or expertise. So the first session or clinic, as I'm calling them, will be on April 20th from noon to 1. And that is just simply a time for you to think about whether this frame in terms of whether your organization will fit this, the program areas is in alignment with the guidelines, makes sense, and we'll kind of sort of troubleshoot there. And on April 30th, again, outcomes are, Cassandra reminded me that there's not a logic model template per se, but that you are asked in the organizational profile to sort of talk about your outcomes. And so we'll spend some time, if you'd like to unpack those, we can do that on April 30th. And then on May 3rd from 10 to 11, if you have questions about budgets or any financial documents, I will be available to answer those questions. In terms of the budgets and financial documents, those should be as current as possible. It may be that you're applying and you're straddling a fiscal year. I want you to think about if it looks like your fiscal year will start at some point during the application process, maybe make a note of that and be prepared to provide an updated organizational budget. So, the next steps are, again, there are clinics. You can, if you have a question outside of this morning's webinar, you can either send that question. If it's a question about Grants Intro, you can send that directly to grants@cct.org. If it's a programmatic question, please send it to aalchicago@cct.org. Again, you can go to, you must go to Grants Intro to start your application and to finish it. The deadline again is May 11th at 11:59 p.m. Applications should be submitted after the deadline. Applications that are submitted after the deadline will not be accepted. This is Consuela Brown. I'm an AAL consultant. I wanted to thank all of you who were able to join our webinar this morning on April 14th. After looking at some of the questions in the chat, as well as some of the sort of unpacking some of the questions that were raised during the Q&A, I wanted to just offer some clarifying responses because I concerned that there may have been some confusion. The first clarifying point is around the diversity board and staff. So while we mention having a Black-led organization, that meaning 51% Black-led, we are specifically looking at a board chair who is Black, as well as an executive director who is Black. The other clarifying point is, in fact, the deadline is in fact May 11th at 11:59 p.m. Please have your application submitted by then. There was some flexibility or language around the grant organizational budget size. So the RFP is pretty specific about that. And it specifies that an organization must have a budget, or an organization, or current organizational budget between 50,000 and 2 million. And so we will be sticking to that range as noted in the RFP. Finally, there is no logic model per se, but there is a question on the organizational profile that speaks to a program activities. And we are asking that you use that question to amplify your, instead of a logic model, we're asking that you fashion your responses to that question to include organizational goals and objectives for the grant period, along with proposed program activities and proposed outcomes. And so what we mean by that is to perhaps an example might be that if you are looking to increase, as from an organizational perspective, your organizational budget by 25%, that would be your goal and objective for the grant period. You would then sort of talk about what those activities might be. It may be that you are cultivating relationships with new funders. You are conducting some fundraisers. You are looking at program expansion. You would offer those activities. Then your outcome for that might be that you are again increasing your budget by maybe 35%, or you're actually monetizing what that would be. So we just wanted to offer those clarifying points, and again invite you, hopefully if you have a particular question that you want to unpack, that we're inviting you to pop in to a peer clinic, and that's the 3 peer clinics, one on program focus, and that is just to kind of help you better understand whether there's some alignment with the AL focus areas and your organizational mission. We're also offering a peer clinic to talk about those outcomes, which is what I just shared. And then finally, we're offering a clinic on financial documents and budgets. Hope you will plan on joining. Thank you. If you had a grant writer, or there's 2 organizations that shares a grant writer, that is fine, perfectly fine. And Fiscal Agency, again, if you at this point do not have your own 501c3, and you're that is okay. You just have to have a fiscal agent who has a 501c3, and you're using some of their financial data to support your application. Okay.
Hello, this is Sandra Bivens with First Street Business Association. I had a question that I chatted to you. I know before you all have had a maximum limit, a limit of what the grant could be, and it was like 25,000. Do you have a maximum limit this year for how much you can request? And secondly, somebody else also asked, does your executive director have to be Black? Because in some of our communities, we are very eclectic. So we might be working with Jordanians and Blacks, and have a whole different group of people, mix of people on our boards, even though the majority of the board is African American. So that's the second question.
Okay, great questions. So the answer to the yes, your ED has to be Black, as well as your board chair. So there are a couple other questions. If you're an LLC, no, you have to be you either have a fiscal agent who's a 501c3, but we are not awarding grants to privately owned or held companies.
No, you have to have a tax exempt status.
Does environmental, no, I did not mean that we would be paying for it. Thank you, Dr. Vessel. AL is not, not mentioning that we would be paying for a grant writer. But if you have, we understand that organizations sometimes subcontract their grant writing needs out and work directly with a consultant who may be writing grants for 2 or 3 organizations, and that is perfectly fine. You know, how you get your grants written, completely up to you, but not an expense that AL is planning to pick up.
Consuela, it's Claudette Baker. And might I add, for those of you who have grant writers, please note that it is important during your site visit that if your executive director or whoever, your program, whatever it is, needs to be very familiar with the grant that you have submitted. That it's not just your professional grant writer who is responding to the question. And so our experience has been that their executive directors present during site visits and are not familiar with the budget, even though this is this is all Gen Op. So that mitigates some of this, but be sure that the employees of the organization are familiar with what you've submitted. Thank you.
So a question about environmental justice. Again, if there's some alignment with the focus areas, the 5 focus areas, then it would be, if you could make a case for it being aligned with one. And let me just say here that we're asking you to focus on one focus area. It's great if your organization happens to be aligned with all or several of the 5. But in this case, we are asking you to be specific about which of the 5 program focus areas you are seeking funding. So I leave that to you. If you can find some alignment with one of those 5 areas, then I would certainly encourage you to apply.
I would like to go back to my question about the $25,000 as the maximum.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Good question. Great question. So historically, the AL grants have, this is a smaller grant program. The grants have historically ranged anywhere from between 5 and 20,000. You could certainly try to ask for what you needed, but the chances of a grant being awarded beyond that 20,000 upward frame is not likely. And yes, this PowerPoint and this is being recorded. And so both the webinar and the slides will be made available.
It'll be on AL's page, and we'll send a follow-up email to everyone that attended. But you can always go straight to alchicago.org and you'll see it tomorrow by end of day.
And then Consuela, there's a question in the chat about whether your fiscal agent has to be Black, and I don't believe that's the case.
That is not, yeah, that's, no, your fiscal agent does not have to be Black.
Consuela, can you address the question about applying to more than one focus area?
So again, we'd encourage you to stick to one focus area, even if your organization does in fact cross several of those focus areas. We're going to ask that you tune in to one of them in particular. And I saw another question around board. If you're a new organization, it's a kind of interesting space to be in. But the application itself will require you to at least list if you've got a steering committee, but some kind of governance structure that gives us a better sense of how your organization is being led and who is sort of accountable for oversight of organizational activities and finances. So hopefully you do have a steering committee and a board. If you don't have a board, there should be at least a steering committee or some sense of who is in fact holding the organization accountable.
May I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
This is Sabrina Childress Miller from Position of Pressure. We're a violence prevention organization. And we have had to take our programming online in a lot of ways because we deal with a lot of CPS schools and community, but of course with the closing because of COVID, obviously, with the schools and the community centers, park districts, that type of thing. So my question is about site visits. So we just started being able to have access to the school again, but I'm not sure when the site visit is. So if we're kind of doing a hybrid of both. So I just kind of wonder what the protocol would be for that.
So again, it would be online, and if you could, I mean, we're not obviously going to be, none of the site visits will be physical. So to the extent of who would be available during that time frame, preferably the ED and someone who's familiar with activities would be on the call.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I'm dancing around that question, but I'm trying to, because we don't.
I do understand. I do understand. We're working on a grant now that was given to us. And we're we need to come up with additional funding to complete that project, although I have figured out a way to complete that project to meet my deadline. But additional funding would be absolutely great. One committee, the Central Park Restoration Committee, which I am the lead on that as well. So I will check out the clinics, and if you put the links in the chat, I'll be back.
Okay, and so we'll send something out about the clinics. Also, feel free to send Cassandra or an email to AAL. What is it, at cct.org? And
I'll put it in.
Yeah, and we
I
can also
appreciate
answer that question. Other
Yes.
questions?
If I may just hop in and make a quick comment. First, I just want to thank everyone for being here and for the great questions that are being offered for this discussion. I'm hearing a lot of questions about alignment with program area and questions around budget and whether or not your individual organization fits. And some of the responses, may be a bit vague, and I just want to concretely say that that's because it's our goal to be flexible such that we can be able to support a broad array of organizations that are doing important work in our communities. And so it is our goal to be flexible, adaptable, meet organizations where they are. And so some of the answers are we leave room for that. So I want to second, I think, what's already been said about we do welcome those applications. We do welcome new organizations applying. And, we're entering this in a position of seeking to support the good work that's being done, even if, there may not be perfect alignment. So.
Thank you, Inger. Whew.
We have a question.
I have a question here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Alexi. Thank you all so much for providing this info session today. It was extremely thorough. I am the founder at Art West Gallery, and we are a very, very new space on the West Side, but I'm excited to see that there is a lot of flexibility for our organization to apply. I do have a question about what a site visit is. So can you all explain exactly what that would look and feel like?
Yes, that's a great question. So it's our time to get to know each other. So a typical site visit would be just checking out introduction, some questions about the organization itself, what you're planning to do, as well as some questions that have come up as a result of the information that's been provided in the organization profile. And it's meant to be conversational. So it is also a chance for you to get to know other people in the city. The African American Legacy Board brings some of the best talent and in the city of Chicago. And so it's a good chance for those organizations to meet those people and players, and for them to get to know you a little better. So it's you'll get usually if there's a site visit, in addition to the time frame, you'll get a suggested framework for how to conduct the site visit and what to prepare for.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question? I'm Jill Heller from Austin Child Care Providers Network. We are a Black-led organization, and our board is comprised of almost everyone on our board is Black. The only one who is not is our board president, but the executive committee is. The vice president, the secretary, the treasurer. So do we meet the criteria or not?
So again, we're looking at Black leadership, and we do look at a Black chair, a board chair, and a Black ED.
Okay.
Hey, Evan.
Hi, how are you?
All right.
Good morning. I'm Evan with Project Sincere. We offer STEM and engineering programs for students all over the city of Chicago. My question is, because it's a general operating grant, is there space or is there preference for organizations that choose to partner with other organizations as relates to applying for the grant? Or should it be, because it's focused on the organization itself, just one organization at a time is preferred? Just curious, thinking of it from the lens of like a more community-centric kind of approach to applying. So just trying to keep those things in mind.
So I'm not sure quite to answer that, and I'll welcome some feedback from Inger and Suzanne, but if you're so we'd be looking at what you as an institution are planning to be able to execute, and is that in alignment with one of those 4 program areas or five focus areas? If your motto is about collaboration, then that's your motto. But does that is the entity that's primarily seeking funding, is that, is what you do as the principal organization in alignment with one of those 5 program areas then?
Yeah, I think we're uniquely led by Black men. Our board chair is a Black woman. Over 50% of our leadership team is Black. Over 50% of our program staff is Black. I would say over 25% of our volunteer program is Black. So as far as the qualifications, and our budget is right in range. So it's not a qualification thing. I guess I've been recently involved in some conversations about how to collaborate. I'm hearing a lot of organizations talking about, am I qualified, am I not? And I was just thinking in terms of like, how do you, how would we be able to be supportive as you all are setting the standard of being supportive? So I was just curious. I think our organization qualifies just fine, but I also, from the standpoint of just wanting to see, holistic success, I was just curious.
So Evan, this is a conversation I think maybe you and I need to just have, because I kind of hear what you're asking, and I think it's more nuanced than this call.
No problem. That sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank
Other
you.
questions? We are 5 minutes in, having to close. Are there any other burning questions?
Can I make a comment, Sandra Bivens again? It seems like just listening to this webinar, which is wonderfully informative, that you have a lot of nuances with the organizations that are in existence today. And I think as you re-listen to this webinar, maybe you could take some of these nuances in consideration as you move forward with the AAL granting process, because organizations have changed. I've been in the business over 20 some years. And so the communities have changed. So those nuances need to be taken into consideration because we do have eclectic communities now. And we can't just kick somebody out because they're not Black, because the grants say they have to be Black, because there are all different things going on in the neighborhoods and the community that causes you to have a different type of ethnic groups involved. So I just think that this was informative, not just for us, but I think it gave you all some insight as to where the community is as well in Chicago.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Bivens. We appreciate your feedback. If it's any consolation, we internally have these conversations quite often. Any other questions?
Yes, I'm sorry for getting on the call late. I had some technical problems with my computer, but I just want to know if the webinar.
I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Marvinetta Penn with Global Girls, and I wanted to know if this webinar would be shared with us because I got on very late because technical problems here in the office. But will it be shared with the attendees? Will it be made available so that I can see the whole thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. So the AL page, as soon as tomorrow, I think is what Cassandra said, you will have access to it.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Anybody with a who wants to last question?
This is Sasha Dalton. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Yes, how are you? I just wanted to be for sure. Are you not funding LLCs that
No.
have a fiscal agent? No, not at all. Okay.
Consuela, Dr. Vessel, I just wanted to say to you guys that I really appreciate you all making sure that African Americans are included and premiered in this process. I've met with several philanthropic groups, and there are conversations that go on as to whether or not African American led agencies should be funded. So I appreciate that there's at least one that's saying they must be, because that is not the norm. I'm telling you. And I actually had to provide some information to a funder who was really wanting to press the need to support African-American leadership, because there's some kind of stigma that if African-Americans are running it, it's not going to be quality. And so people are second guessing without coming to us and asking us a question. So I am thrilled, whether I get the grant or not, just to know that there is a focus on us. I want to tell you, thank you. Thank you so much.
I can always count on you, Dr. Vessel, to bring us in, bring us home. On that beautiful note, if the co-chair and chair want to close this out.
Hi, I had a quick question that wasn't answered in the chat. Just if an organization, our organization is just over a year old, so we haven't submitted federal 990s or completed an organization fiscal audit, will we still be able to apply?
So can you shoot me an email, or the program committee at, can we put up, just as we close, that email address, and I'm going to invite you both to come to the clinic and to send me a message. You probably may need another fiscal agent, but I need to know more, and I can't do it on this call.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, beautiful people. I do hope you will consider applying. And we appreciate you taking time to come and visit us. And again, look for the copy of this webinar, and again, the slide presentation will be made available on the AAL website. Suzanne,
I'm going to toss it to my vice chair, Inger, to close us out. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone for attending, for your helpful questions for the group as a whole. We look forward to receiving your applications. Please don't hesitate to contact us directly with questions or attend one of the clinics. We're certainly looking to support the important work that you're doing in our communities, and we look forward to receiving your application.